And folks, we've got Bernie Penner tonight, who's running for Minnesota State House in District 10A. And it's a delight to talk to you, sir. We've talked many times, and this is a great chance to have an actual free form conversation. Nice to see you tonight.
Well, I agree with that. I like the idea of just being able to talk off of the cuff, but knowing we have a focus, we have a purpose. So it's not totally random, but yet we're comfortable. Um, and likewise with yourself, I knew you were up in Brainerd, the area, at the fishing opener. We probably don't want to go into a lot of discussion there, but that was a great day. And I knew you were up there. I saw some of the video you ran. Uh, but that's my part of the world here. That was actually Cross Lake, that area. Um, and we know the mayor from that town, and he's rather prominent in the headlines these days, Mayor Jackson Purfirst. So anyhow, it's exciting. These are exciting times, but I think they're very important times as well.
Cross Lake is a really beautiful area of Minnesota, and it was really nice to get up there last summer. And I had memories of being there as a really young child and fishing in some of those lakes in that area. What memories? Yeah, you're really from God's country up there. And it was a fun day, but maybe we can reminisce on the governor's fishing opener another time. But that was
Right.
a lot of fun. Um, so in your area of 10A, what are the issues that are of particular impact to your citizens of Minnesota in 10A as you think about representing them from your district as you run
Well,
for office?
right. For one thing, in most of outer Minnesota, we have a little bit of distance from St. Paul to the out part of Minnesota. And the one thing I think of as a kid, the state fair was the Great Minnesota Get Together, it was called. Of course, I always liked the machinery that was there as a kid, because that's what I grew up with, the machines and being out in the fields, out in the woods with my 22 rifle.
Yeah.
So my growing up was a lot different than the urban kids. Even St. Cloud people probably didn't experience what I experienced as a kid. So now living here in District 10A, we're between just for a geographical idea, we have the Mississippi River on the west side, and our big installation would be Camp Ripley, the National Guard base, the Army base, and that's a big facility, the Camp Ripley facility. On our east side would be Mille Lacs Lake, another major geographical feature in our rocks and cows land. So in between there, and it goes over to Aiken County. Okay, Aiken County, it would be the northeast part
Mhm.
of 10A. So if we include Aiken County and then all the way to the Mississippi River, that's about 110 miles. And we're about 40 miles north and south. So District 10A stops just outside of the city limits of Brainerd. And we
So
get into, yeah, yeah.
Rocks
And
and
we get
Cows is Memphis.
into,
Yeah. Sorry, go
right.
ahead, Bernie.
Yeah, and we get into the south or the north edge of Little Falls, just just a little bit into that city. So from Little Falls to Brainerd, we really don't have a major city in 10A per se. Um, we have a lot of beautiful small villages. I don't want to start naming them because somebody's going to feel left out because some are just an intersection in the
Oh,
road.
they're
And
beautiful towns, though. They are just right out of the historical past. They're all Lake
there you
Wobegon
go.
towns.
That,
They're just beautiful,
That's
Minnesota.
what they are. So we have junctions and we have corners, Cronstrom's Corner and a place called J&R's Junction.
Yeah.
So
And there's always a cafe there, and there's a
oh
place
yeah,
where people
right.
meet. And I
Yep.
had a great breakfast there at a couple different spots. I had jumped into a bunch of different restaurants there in town. Great people, just
Oh, yeah.
struck up conversations with people I'd never met before, and then pretty soon it's an hour later. And of course, it
Yeah,
was somewhat of a business adventure when we were there. We were busy, but you mentioned rocks and cows, and that, of course, is a term of endearment for the people of Minnesota. That we're proud to be from the rocks and cows flyover country. And you
right,
mentioned having a 22 rifle. You have respect for the culture of what it means to carry a rifle in the middle of nowhere. You might be
right.
walking the trap line, or you might come up against an animal, but you have a healthy respect for firearms. That's something to be said for your stance growing up comfortably with a firearm. Is
Exactly.
there something in your district, because there's no one urban setting, and I think that can be a blessing in a way, but is there an issue with rural health care or a rural ambulance service that we're going to be seeing the institution of some expansion of that under President Trump and so forth? There's going to be more. Also, agricultural funding is coming on. Although your area is not quite a farmland area, am I right?
That's right. Yeah.
It's so
Right. So we are in that. I did work with USDA, the Farm Service Agency was my career. Um, located in Brainerd for my headquarters, but I actually traveled the area north through Cass County, which went up to the border, up to Cass Lake. So that was my northern reach. My southern reach would have been Onamia, which is down at the southwest corner of Mille Lacs Lake, actually. So that triangular area, or at an angle from northwest to southeast, would have been over 100 miles. That was my zone where I met most of the landowners in that area. And being there for 30 years, you do meet a lot of people. So I can agree when you say we don't have a large urban center. Neither do we have large scale farming.
right.
But we have a good 3,000 active farmers. Um, but they're diverse. Some are orchards. We have specialty stuff such as wild rice that's raised in this area. Other specialty crops are large. Pick your own strawberries, pick your own blueberries, things of that nature. Um,
Nice.
and a lot of small animal, sheep, goats. A lot of people raise cattle, some just for breeding, some for young stock. Um, so we're really diverse in the type of agriculture that we have. Something coming on really big right now is the direct from the field to the home. So the farmer will bring in their produce into a marketplace, sometimes twice a week, three times a week. And those markets are very busy, obviously. They're well attended, always fresh produce. So as I look around at the farming, I was kind of scoffed at on one hand because I didn't have 1,000-acre farms, with a 500 horsepower tractor and a
Right.
80-foot disc. We just didn't have that. But
Right.
we had 2,000 farmers with a 60 horsepower tractor,
Right.
and some of them very extremely knowledgeable and skilled at what they did. I mean, really skilled. So they could produce off of 500 acres a very nice living for their family. Um, so to have that, and that's really a lot of that has gone idle, not being used as it was. We went from, if I remember right, Wes, 600 dairy farms when I moved here in 1978. I don't think we even have a dozen anymore. Um,
That's terrible.
well, that's a short time to
Yeah.
lose 95% of one of your main things that you did, one of your main activities. That could continue, but I see something happening with this revival of using that land once again, growing a sustainable crop. that you could actually resell on a local
Yeah.
venue. And now with communication, we have people able to order online, and within 4 hours they could get a product. Um,
Mhm.
we have carriers all over the place, people that are contract um, movers, carriers, small trucks, pickups, cars. So we can make a farm to house delivery, much like any Walmart would do or anything else that hasn't been developed yet. But my goodness, if we could have some of that fraud money being distributed to some independent landowners, uh, they could use $10,000 and probably turn that into a $50,000 enterprise very quickly, um, and repay the loan with interest if you want to look at it that way. So yes, there's a lot of potential, a lot of acres not used, and a lot of people very talented, I think, that would love to do things like that.
Farmers are some of the smartest people on earth.
Oh,
And
by a
uh,
long shot.
in your area, then, do people, you mentioned fraud, is that something on people's mind as they
You
see the
know,
money that's been
we
stolen?
are we're crossing a paradigm shift right there. We're still a lot of Minnesota nice here. Um, that's changing because people are realizing um, when you add up the fraud, now we're over 10 billion. Uh, Maybe looking at going. I mean, we're
Maybe
just keep moving
19.
up. Yeah,
Yeah,
I think
maybe, yeah.
19.
Depending
When
on
you
when you
start
start the fraud meter,
right, and
when you
then you
start.
divide your constituents into those numbers, and you look at how much of our taxes are literally disappeared. It comes to something like $12,000 per landowner. That's crazy. And if we would get a $10,000 small business loan to start some sort of gardening or small crop, I mean that would be amazing. Well, here's $12,000 just gone, stolen from us. Yeah, that message is getting through. The hard part, Wes, is to handle that word fraud. Everybody gets a little bit panicky. "Oh, I don't want to talk about fraud or corruption, words
Right.
of that nature. But, if you run a stoplight, if you steal somebody's car, that's corruption, that's fraud. you know?
Yeah.
So we deal with it. We just don't want to talk about it.
Yeah.
Our favorite representative or our favorite senator or Lord help us, our governor, being guilty of fraud. We're
Yeah.
making that shift, and it's happening lightning speed, faster than we want, actually.
So you're seeing constituents actually bring that up, or the people that you meet, the people that you know, whether they're farmers or business people,
Right.
they're starting to mention this at community meetings, at
Oh,
town
yes.
halls, and
Right.
yeah. Well,
Yeah.
that's excellent because it needs to be dealt with. And what about the taxes that people are paying? Have you seen the
Right.
same sorts of property tax increases in 10A that other Minnesota citizens? How do people feel about paying their taxes these days? And
Well, we've
generally,
always been right. We've always been a very tax conscious community. I mean, back in the day, I've been here, like I say, since 1978. So, it's not at all unusual for my friends. I've never done it actually, but to go into the courthouse and say, I'm going to question my tax assessment. I don't
uh,
agree with this. Well, that was normal. And it was never a panic. Nobody raised an eyebrow.
yeah,
You just
yeah,
sat down with one of the staff and 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 you might get a deal because they say, oh well,
yeah,
we didn't
yeah,
realize that that was just an empty building. I'm sorry, we didn't realize that. So you get your taxes
yeah,
adjusted.
yeah.
Now
They
we're
accept
looking at,
no criti. Yeah, go.
yeah,
How is
I
it
mean, it
now?
is
Sorry,
like,
go ahead.
yeah, it is like you walk in and you go, well, this is $5,000 more than last year. What's going on? I haven't done anything. Well, now we all know the case now that the budget bust was filtered back
Yeah,
down to the local communities. And
yeah,
all of a sudden, we're picking up a loss that went over to Somalia, for goodness sakes. All of a
yeah.
sudden, how did that end up in my real estate tax? It did. It literally did. So
It's
Yeah,
astonishing.
yeah, it's astonishing. I don't think we really have the words for it yet, and
Correct.
that's a problem. If you've ever watched somebody very activated, very emotional, and they have no words to say what they're going through, that's horrible. It's a horrible feeling for them. Because I mean, they're just looking at you and they're going, and so they'll say something weird, some swear word or
Yeah,
whatever.
sure.
But you know
Well,
what's
just
going on. They
people
just,
can't believe it. It's
yeah,
actually unbelievable that
yeah,
it's gotten
yeah,
this far out of control. And lots of people gave warnings about it. Lots of
yeah.
people tried to say it was going on. And years ago, and I just accidentally found a video clip of myself from 2018 protesting in front of Carolyn Ham's building when she was at the DHS in St. Paul. And I'm with a large group of people. I had completely forgotten about this protest. And I just found the footage of this protest, one of several, and it resulted in a meeting with Carolyn Ham where she admitted to a lot of the fraud. And she said her investigators were looking into it. And I'm sorry, I didn't mean to grab the football
Oh,
again, but
you're
I,
good.
I, I try to talk less. So,
Yeah, you're
what
good.
are,
Well, but as long as you said that, and you did ask the question, are people becoming aware? I mean, that's what you asked.
yes,
And so as a community, I have a very personal viewpoint of this, by the way, because one of my jobs with USDA was to enroll farmers in programs that only the farmers would get. I mean, it was an exclusive group. So you might
uh,
want to holler discrimination,
no,
segregation. No, no, this was their program. It was
yes,
formed by their representative, their senator. So it was a representation in the republic, if you want to look at it that
yeah,
way.
no,
So,
absolutely.
I always had to wade through that mess whenever I went to the courthouse or to the school board. Oh, you're the guy that pays those farmers. The rest of us aren't getting that, et cetera,
Sure.
et
Well, the
cetera.
farmers are making the food, they're growing the food
Right.
that we enjoy. Farming is a matter of national security, and who owns our farmland should be a matter of national security. That
Right.
brings up a point. More people are conscious and being
Right.
cognizant of the Chinese Communist Party buying
Right.
farmland up in Minnesota. Are you, I mean, I didn't anticipate discussing this, but
That's
is
okay.
that something that you're kind of thinking about? Is that on your radar as a
Oh,
candidate?
well, it's not only on my
Or
radar, it's in my DNA.
nice, nice.
Here's why. Here's why.
Yes,
When that issue first came up, 1990s, I think, in the mid 80s and the
yes,
90s. Um, a lot of stuff happened after LBJ. And I don't want to slam somebody who can't
yeah,
speak for themselves. He's gone. But obviously he left some imprints behind. And
yeah,
a lot of it was the government is bigger and better. We can help you. That was kind of one of the things he sort of stood for. Well, I
right.
was over in Vietnam because of him. Not real
Oh,
happy about that. Um,
right,
and Mr. Nixon actually brought me home. Um,
right.
and you can say what you want about your favorite, old politicians, but
Yeah,
when it comes right down to coming home from Vietnam, I was pretty glad I got home.
yes,
When I had to
yeah.
go over there, I wasn't very glad. And one was LBJ and one was Nixon. So having said that,
That's right.
now
Yeah,
the
and
land
only Nixon
ownership
could go to
thing,
China, and
yeah,
it's
yeah, right.
in hindsight, and I've read a lot about Nixon because my early political
Oh,
memories were formed by seeing Richard Nixon on
mhm,
television as a young child. And then I met people like Hubert Humphrey back in the
right.
day, and even America Firsters like Charles Lindbergh once upon a
Right.
time. But
Yeah,
if you
yeah,
but if you look at how we got sucked into Vietnam, yes, it's a very dark chapter in American history, and it was done through a lot of skullduggery and tricks, and
it was.
and we can't blame the men who things as times moved on. People
Right.
understand that a lot of people were sent to do something that they weren't very keen on doing. And, thank you for your service, because Vietnam was some real shit.
Yeah.
And people don't appreciate that. And it was a mistake. If they want to talk about why we were there, they should blame the socialists in France. They should
Exactly. People don't
uh,
know that, but that's a
they don't
fact.
blame the French government for
Yeah.
tricking us into the tripwire. So by the time they got to Dien Bien Phu and their
Yes.
colonial expansion was over with in Southeast Asia, which had been going on since 1820,
Yes.
and we were propping up this illegitimate regime which had tried to reach out to the United States and wanted to model their constitution after our constitution, because Ho
Right.
Chi Minh loved America, and
Yeah.
none of that was allowed to be part of the. So anyway, don't get me started, because
Oh, it's
I'm
good. No, no, I actually
fascinated by
love,
that.
yeah, I actually love history like that, just like
Love it.
yourself.
Yeah. Yes, sir.
But when it comes to the land ownership, we actually, in USDA, we were given a mandate to look for any foreign owned land. So
Nice.
in my office, in my official duties, daily duties, I had questions I had to ask every producer. Everybody who came in to use my program had to be screened that they didn't know anything or were part of any foreign land ownership. So it was a big deal for my agency. So when I said, not only am I interested in it, it's stamped into my DNA. I had to literally functionally do that work. And most farmers were not aware of what was going on, but I had the receipts, as they say these days. I knew what was going on. And so I'm really uh, alert to that.
Nice.
And I have to be. So through the food manufacturing of this country, I think that's probably one of the, if you want to talk about a funnel or a focusing point, agriculture is one of those in America. It has to be.
Absolutely. And like it's very important that we learn to make our own vaccines and not import our medicines from China. Or it's very important that we learn to have a food supply that is not owned or controlled by China. There's
Right.
neighboring countries with China today who don't allow food imports from China, not
Well,
just for economic reasons, but
I,
because they don't trust the cleanliness and the sanitation in China. There's deeper reasons. It's not xenophobia, although China's neighbors do have a lot of xenophobia toward China for good reason, for centuries of having been attacked by
right,
China. But
right.
um,
Yeah,
but
that's very
Minnesota,
interesting.
it's an
I,
interesting conversation, and I'm glad we brought it up, because I had no idea that that was in your DNA, as you say, and that's really good.
it is,
Uh,
right? It
yeah,
actually is. And I think that's probably why when I became active, interested in being a representative of this area, I can kind of separate that from politics to some extent and just say representing your area. Um,
yes,
just do and just as a objective term. Um, because
yeah,
that is one of the things that I brought up to many people. Who is my representative? And I'm not going to mention names on this podcast we're doing, but I think everybody in Minnesota should ask that question. Who's your representative? Do you know
yeah.
that person? Do you know who they are, where they live, what they stand for? Do you know their policies? Do you know anything about the politics? Do you know what they vote for when they're in St. Paul? I think the average person would say, I'm clueless. I'm just clueless.
Sadly,
I don't know. And that's sad.
yeah,
So
yes, I
me
agree.
working for the federal government, but yet embedded in a local community, it was both worlds. I had to know my school board because I'm a public figure. I have to know my commissioner, though I'm not working for the county government. I had to know my senator and representative, even though I didn't work for the state. I did work for the federal, and my job exposed me to all these people. I had no choice. So when I couldn't know the person I should know, it was a little concerning to me. And I worked to do that. I'd go to the fair, I'd shake hands, go to the booth. I've always been more Republican, so I would go to the GOP booth, of course. I would go to both of them, but I'm more inclined, and I would, okay, you are so and so, my rep. Good to meet you. I hope we meet. Well, when you go for 14 years and never have that other meeting, something's missing there. I mean, I shouldn't just meet the guy at the fair. They're just,
Well,
you know,
absolutely. And that's the same thing in my area where people don't have much of an opportunity to meet
right.
their senators or the representatives outside of really controlled
Yep,
meetings that are operated by the DFL party. All of our people are Democrats, but they have some Republicans that cross over and are more they're invited to those events. Others refuse to go. Uh, Brad Finstad, for instance, Congressman Finstad, his meetings get shut down when the Democrats show up. They protest and they make a lot of noise, so
right.
the meetings can't continue. But ironically, they keep calling for meetings. But um, your area is probably a less a dynamic area in terms of the activism. I imagine you don't have
Right.
people going over the top to shut
Well,
meetings
we
down.
have in the Trump campaign, we did. We had people
Oh,
coming through opposing. Uh, rather, it was probably one of the first times I saw that being here again since 1978. I've not seen much in the street until the 2024 campaign. Um,
oh,
and now we have signs being stolen by the other side, literally,
oh,
taken right off of the front yard of our GOP, because we had an open building for people to stop in from June all the way to November. Well, they're
yeah.
taking signs right off the front lawn of the building. I'm going, what
Yeah.
is that
They
about?
steal our signs in Rochester. They steal our
Yeah,
flags. They
yeah,
deface our bumper stickers and scribble on them, or
right. And then,
they go after our cars
oh
if you're
yeah,
not around, they actually vandalize your vehicle. So
right. So one example, we had some events where um, Mr. Stauber would come through town, Congressman Stauber would come through town, he'd stop and see us. So we were on camera. There'd be news people out. Well, then we'd have some demonstrators and some of the language being shouted across the street. Man, you
uh,
didn't want your kids outside. Come on. Oh, man, you don't have to listen to
are
that.
these locals or are they
Yeah,
bussed
well,
in? Are they
we
people?
saw
Some
buses come through town, the bus would park, and all of a
uh-huh,
sudden there'd be
uh-huh.
people around. So you go, okay.
Yeah,
Uh, yeah, stuff like that. So it was not a lot. I don't want to blow that out of proportion, but it was
sure.
something I hadn't seen. I just hadn't seen it.
I
So,
just I imagine local folks don't really engage in that type of. They'll try to talk to people, but they don't go after each other tooth and nail the way the urban people that go around, the
right.
movable protest people go
Yeah,
from, they have a
right.
budget, for doing
Yeah, no,
this.
we don't. So we didn't see a lot of really organized, protests, if that's what you want to call it. Not a lot
Yeah.
of them, but it was more than we ever had seen. I'll tell you that. A lot
Uh-huh.
more than we ever had seen. So the temperature, the climate here for political, like you say, the dynamic, it's not real high, but we are between a 70 and 80% red or conservative voting area. So
Yeah.
so we don't really have as much contest between the two parties as we do factions within the party. uh,
Oh,
and
okay.
I
Okay.
don't want to use the word faction in a negative
Well,
way.
sure.
Some of that's good. You have your caucuses. You have a caucus for this,
Yeah.
caucus for this. So some of that's good and normal. You should have that. Um, but when you can't come out of the caucus and meet at your general meeting and get along, no, there's something happening. We got an issue now.
Uh,
And we saw some of that happening. I think
uh,
it's better now than it was right in the midst of the election. I think it's actually better right now. We've got a little more unity. Um, we're turning more to that. We have a common cause all of a sudden. We have a common
yes.
enemy. Does that make sense? A common enemy.
Yes.
Yeah. If you have a common enemy, that brings different factions together. It absolutely does. Um, so just before we're talking here, I had an hour, you know, um, discussion on the phone with somebody who's a Facebook friend. And I just gave him my phone number. I said, hey, if you get a chance, you want to call me? He said, yeah, I'll call you in 40 minutes. Ding, ding, ding. There he is.
Yeah.
And we had a great visit. I mean, a good visit. Because I followed the guy for 2 years. He said something that I kind of questioned. I thought, which side is this guy on? I thought he was ABC, and now he sounds a little XYZ. And I'm going,
Oh,
so I wanted to talk to him about it. Well,
okay.
he explained himself. It was
Okay.
just a matter of dialogue. It was just how he worded it. That's all. That's all it
Right.
was.
Right.
So we
Sometimes
had this
misunderstandings
discussion.
start. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Facebook is a hard place to have a
yeah,
meaningful conversation. And
yeah.
gotcha questions with the networks are a hard place to really do a campaign strategy.
Oh
I
yeah,
was going to ask you tonight, are you
yeah.
thinking that, if you did a sit down interview with network television, or if you were
Right.
asked to go to a debate with the League of Women's Voters, run by the Democrats in this area, you shared something really reasonable about going ahead and doing that, because in your area the League of Women's Voters doesn't sound to be so radical. In Rochester it's extremely radical and left wing, so it's a function of the Democrat Party, it's a function of the DFL. But your
Right.
area there, the League of Women's Voters is more reasonable, aren't
Right.
they?
Yeah, I mean, I
So
would say their purpose is more objective. I mean, they're a league, hopefully, to get more
yeah,
activity, people to vote. I mean, that's it. So that should be a neutral situation in my
it
book.
ought to
Uh,
be, but
yeah,
yeah, it's
it's often not, right? So,
yeah.
yeah, I would be more apt to expose myself with more liberal folks,
Sure.
because I know them. I know
Yeah.
most of them. I know their background, and they're probably a second generation of some of my customers for those 30 years, and some of them have become more liberal. Some have become very almost hostile libertarian, which is okay. I can handle. I can handle it,
Is
but
that due to frustration with the mainstay of the Republican Party? And I don't want to pick a scab here off a
no,
wound,
no,
but
no,
I'm
no.
not digging. But I can understand a lot of the things that the libertarians say about the
Right.
Republican Party, and I also, unfortunately, I do appreciate some of the things the mainstream Republicans say about calling for unity. But if you see the rhinos working on both sides, and you
Yeah.
see people with corporate interests or nonprofit interests calling the shots on both sides, some people walk away in frustration, and we see a lot of that in our area,
Right.
where really there's the corporate interests of the Mayo Clinic and there's the corporate interests of the IBM crowd that creates a gravity that interferes with the working class people's interests, really. And
Right.
it's hard to make the Democrats see that they're impacted by the elitism in the DFL and the elitism in certain aspects of the Republican side too. But
Right.
there's space for a new movement there. What do you?
Right. And I think how you worded that was very good, um, because you gave the impression, and I think this is correct, by the way, when you see the leniency and the complicity, people are complicit without speaking up, and you go, no, that's I know these people. Why are you complicit? Normally, you would not sit idly and let this go by. Because a crime is a crime, whether your son does it or your husband does it or your wife does it. A crime is a crime, and we should be obligated to address that. It's a crime.
You also see like a specific group of people defrauding again and again, year
Yeah.
after year, and then a certain parties candidates are receiving the donations from the convicted people. The Feeding Our Future convicts have a whole list of
Yes.
campaign donations to that party, or
Yes.
even that party in other parts of the United States, not
Yes.
just money going back to Somalia, but they're supporting other candidates in a West Coast state or an East Coast state. So this this fraud has really crossed state lines. But I'm sorry,
Right,
back
exactly.
to yeah.
No, no. And to get back to the a little local again, what about the libertarian or what about the radical conservative? What about the constitutionalist who's really quite, narrow-sighted about some things, and they get rather firm in their discussion. I mean, they're a little hard to buck against because they have very straight language, very firm and concisive. But I can give space for that because what you just said, we're just tired of looking at the flip side of it. We're tired of it. And so now I'm
Yeah.
going to be vocal. I just can't be quiet any longer. So I don't know if you saw my resume. I also was a clinical family therapist. And one of the big things in a family is when one of the members gets a little out of joint about something, could be dad, could be mom, or a kid, teenage kid, and they burst in the house and their language just isn't all that cool. It's just kind of,
Yeah, yeah.
whoa.
Well,
All
yeah,
right. So that happens in a broader scale as well. Uh,
yeah.
I mean, somebody in your town, somebody on the city council, somebody in your church board just had enough. And
Yes.
and all of a sudden they speak out and we want to label them, we want to brand them. And I say, no, no. First of all, that isn't who they were a year ago. I know that for a fact. That's not who they were. What happened? What's going on? Anyhow, I don't want to make a clinical issue out of that, but on the broader scale, I think that's where some of these factions and these groups come from. They are
Yeah,
people who just had enough,
that's right.
and so they find a like-minded person who actually has something going, a group or a meeting or a. I'm okay with that. I think that's amazing.
Yes.
That
It's good.
yeah,
It's
go
better
ahead.
that they have a meeting and be
Yeah,
talking to people and
right,
working it out with people that share their values. Let's
right.
say there's a group of guys in their I guess they would be in their 40s and they've come back from one of the forever wars in
Yeah,
Iraq 1 or Iraq 2 or the ongoing, they're back from Afghanistan and they form up with their buddies and they form a
yep.
group. It's absolutely to be expected. We saw that after the Vietnam War, and
I was one of those. Yeah,
yeah, yeah, and
yeah,
and it's guys that are working through stressing situations that they
right,
lived through together. And there's people that didn't want them to go to war to begin with.
right,
Way back when the Democrats were a party of peace, they would have been against the war as it started ramping up under George W. Bush and not so much, George W. Bush, the protests in the streets against bombing the wrong country for 9/11
yes,
were out of control. But nobody wanted to see our forces go overseas. And then, of course, when the coffins started coming back, and the men that lived through that, and the women, we have to say,
right,
nobody, looking back on it now, nobody's thinking it was a good thing because
right,
we really didn't. President Trump offers an alternative to that. He doesn't want to see our boys and girls go over to the Ukraine and bleed out fighting former Soviet Union, Russia, and now
right.
all of a sudden, Democrats are calling for war. So in Minnesota, we have all these veterans units. And what can we do better for our veterans in Minnesota? I'd like to see a cure for homelessness for the veterans and drug therapies if they're having issues with controlled substances and whatnot,
Right.
and adequate health care for all of those people. Have you thought in your area, do you have many veterans and guys who are frustrated with the VA? And I suppose things are better than they used to be, but
Well,
what
yeah,
what
and
do
I
you
guess that's we could really spend some time on this, but I will touch on it because it's close to my heart, obviously. So let me touch on that. I went to a assembly, a gathering. Are you familiar with Minnesota Teen Challenge? You know what that
Yes,
organization is.
yes,
So no,
yes.
I actually was a mentor for a while with them for about five or
Okay.
6 years. Well, they
Well,
had an
that's great.
assembly here, and the guy who spoke, I wish I could say his name. He was the
Yeah.
responsible person for getting the people out of Afghanistan. When
Wow.
Biden shut stuff down, this man was the front runner who organized the flights to get out.
Wow.
He's a worldwide known. I
Yeah,
just
don't
can't.
don't say his name because I don't have the skills to edit it out. But I hear you. I
Yeah.
see you. I hear
So
you.
I went to that meeting, and one of the groups
Hmm.
sponsoring, they always have the booths set up out in the entryway. Well, one of those booths was the veterans, right? So I
Right.
boldly walked up, introduced myself. I expected a more informal conversation, more, oh man, a backslap maybe.
Yeah.
Man, and
Yeah.
I mean, they were good to me. I had my cap on,
Yeah.
my Vietnam combat cap, which was
Yeah.
okay. So they were kind, respectful. But
Yeah.
when I wanted to talk business, it turned into bureaucracy right away. And I'm
Oh.
going, I was so disappointed. I thought, no, just keep talking to me, like
Oh.
your buddies out behind the barnyard. Come on, don't
Oh.
shift into your, bureaucratic mode. I
Oh.
don't care how smart they are. That didn't matter to me.
Yeah.
And I'm sure they knew every book that they had on their bookshelf, and they were good people.
Uh,
But don't put your bureaucratic persona on me, please. I don't
um,
need that. Um,
yeah.
I've always been that kind of a guy. I
Um,
taught biology. I learned how to teach biology. I was a Minnesota licensed biology teacher for a while. Um, but I wanted to be the biology teacher that was not a geek, who
yeah.
the kids actually could relate with the guy. Because I
Yeah.
was used to sitting in a science room and the teacher was a million miles away from us. He just couldn't relate. Uh,
Yeah.
so, what I kind of wanted my teacher to do is put that formaldehyde grasshopper on the end of a stick and flip it across the room, smack somebody in the head with it. Because that would have been my style of teaching, Here,
Yeah. Yeah.
here's a grasshopper, figure out what's in it. Bloop. Yeah, I mean, you get my point. But so I kind of conducted my life that way. I wanted to be good at what I did. So I went through college. I got my A pluses. I could do the book work. I didn't have to be that professor when I got out on the job. I could be who I
Yeah.
was, right? That I think we need more of that in politics. We need those kind of skilled, super skilled people, high quality performing people, but they could also get right down, put the boots on, go in the barnyard and do whatever they needed to do.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Uh,
Well, it's great in a free form, long form conversation to be
right.
able to get into that without doing, gotcha questions. And do you approve
Right.
this what is this
Yeah.
your policy? Is that your policy? What are you going to do? Quick answer in 2 minutes.
Yeah.
Like a
I
lot of those
mean,
conferences. I don't like the settings where you have to come up with an answer that's, like I said to you before, written on the inside of your eyelids, because obviously
right, exactly.
in our area, the Democrats have the answers memorized to the questions, and they go to these forums, and their eyes are closed because they got the note cards in their memory. They're
Yeah.
looking up and they're accessing their prefrontal lobe, and
Yeah.
they're
You
they're
yeah, you did give a name mention of some legislative people in your area.
yeah.
I don't know, is that okay to do fair turnabout for my area?
Well, sure, but I mean, I'm interviewing you, but I could mention their names. There's Senator Liz Bolden, that people will have an opportunity once in a while to go to
Right.
one of her meetings, and she'll have meetings usually with all of the Democrats, and they have the university at their disposal or one of the churches. They have a lot of venues that they can speak at. There's a
Right.
place called Live 125, which is like a retirement athletic building for all, well, not just retirement aged people, but it's
Right.
open to all ages. But still, there's Andy Smith, who's a representative. There's Kim Hicks, who's a representative. There's
Right.
Tina Liebling, who's a representative, who's been in there a long, long time. And then they also have a movie theater where they've had events at, and a bookstore. Governor Walz has come to Rochester a lot.
Right.
Bernie Sanders was here
Right.
the other year, and Governor Walz was also here for a celebration at one of the big venues in town. So they all get together. They have a lot of activities. They also have
Right.
access to, like, say, the electrical union's headquarters. They use
Oh,
the local IBEW 434 chapter for some of the Democrat meetings.
right,
And
right.
the
So,
Republicans are usually renting a space or a hall
right.
at the.
So in this area, just to kind of, counterplay what you said, years ago, I was first name basis with Jim Oberstar. Uh,
Okay. Yeah,
and
I remember him. Yeah, I.
oh yeah, and because he was in my area, he'd be in Duluth. I lived in Duluth at the time. So so I would actually meet him. I remember I met him in an elevator once. This was George W., when that war just begun. And he remembered my name. He goes, "Hi, Bernie." I says, "Well, Mr. Oberstar, nice to meet you." I said, "How do you remember me?" "Well, you're a Navy reservist and you called me." And I did. I had to call him for a little favor because they messed up my paperwork. And, he didn't really help me out. He did a great job. A lot of people liked him. They really did. They got along with him very well, the Democrat. And I was just coming off of my Kennedy Democrat phase of my life. I was a Kennedy Democrat. That's what my family was.
Yeah,
They were
my
not
family as
Catholic,
well. Yeah,
but they
we.
swallowed the bullet. They swallowed the
Yeah.
Catholic thing because we were Protestant. And they
Oh,
said, "Man, but he's a good president, a great president."
yeah,
So I grew up accepting a man who would
yeah,
have not fit our family values because he
yeah,
was Catholic, we were Protestant, but
yeah,
they accepted him because of his good politics, right?
yeah,
I grew up that way. So when Oberstar comes along, I could make that same adaptation. It was easy, no
yeah,
problem. He
yeah.
does a lot of good stuff. He was a transportation secretary, all that good stuff. So he knew my first name. And I said, "But you're a dove." And I said this in the elevator, the two of us. He says, "Well, you're a hawk." I said, "Yes, I am." But we had a great exchange like that. It was not a problem. I
Right.
and then I'm looking at Senator Weissenberg right now. I know
Yeah.
we talked about him. Well, he's a wildlife guy. He's a top-notch fish and wildlife expert, and he
Yes.
actually worked with Camp Ripley. That was one of his positions. The guy was just he's an ace at his job, excellent
Nice.
at it. No, he's a senator, right? But
Yes.
he appears the on everyday venues. It doesn't really matter. There he is. It could
He's.
be a barbecue, it could be a pig roast, whatever. There he is.
I owe him an apology. Like I told you earlier
Yeah.
today, as I saw him out on the. I was told, "Hey, there's Weissenberg," and I looked over, but we were in another boat,
Oh
and he was
man.
some distance away. And I remember looking over, like, the who's that? Because I was in a different. I was in a mode of that thing we had going on with Governor Walz in the boat
Right.
for the
I
fishing
got
opener.
it.
I was in a different headspace,
Well,
but I owe him a huge thank you and an apology. But yeah, I see his speeches on the House
right,
floor, and
right.
he's just on the Senate floor, and he's on fire.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's
And then if you
really
go a little bit to the west, we
strong.
have we have
Yeah,
Mike Weiner. I think Mike Weiner is of the same ilk, kind of the same cut. He's with the people, has a farm. You see his videos. He's on the
yeah,
combine. He's on the plow tractor.
yeah,
That's just what he
yeah.
does.
I love it. I absolutely love it. And the dirty shoes and
Yeah,
everything.
yeah,
And I
all
think
that
that
stuff.
the guys should definitely do more like speeches from hay bales. You
Yeah,
know,
yes,
just
exactly.
this is we are an agricultural state, and we need to give
Yes,
respect and tip our hats to the people that put food on our tables.
right.
And if you
So,
can't do that, then
yeah.
you're being disrespectful. Don't
So
you know?
of the well, like I say, in District 10A, we have, I think, 10,000 constituents is about what. I mean, that's not a perfect number, but I'll just throw that out there. Very close.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
we have our typical. We have 5 BPOUs that surround this area. So I really have to make contact with 5 different PPOUs. That gets a little confusing, but it's okay. You do that. But the point is, when you separate that out to the individual, get down to your average constituent. Who is that? That
Yeah,
man or woman or the kids or whatever it is. Well, it's population wise, you got Brainerd and Little Falls. Those are the centers, but that is really not the representative. That's not who we represent specifically. Those people actually serve all the rest of this rural area. So if you got a
yeah,
hardware store, you don't think
yeah,
so much about the people living in the city of Brainerd. You got a hardware store, you better have stuff for that part-time farmer, a lot of it. Uh, Same with food. You don't feed them all ready-made food. These are people who have their own gardens. So there are grocery stores. They got to be geared up for that. You got
right.
canning material. You got make your own honey material. You got tap your own maple syrup material. I don't think you find that downtown Minneapolis. I doubt it. I don't think so.
No, no.
But that's the area where I live. So my conclusion is even the city people are aware of the nature and the community that's out here in Rocks and Cows, District 10A. And that is probably the representation, when people approach me to run for office, and I know the people who approach me. I know what they're like. and 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 I know
Yeah,
their motive. I knew their motive. And
yeah,
it is far from the establishment reaching out to me. I
right.
mean, it's very different from that.
Yeah,
Uh,
there's a
yeah,
can-do
yeah,
element with the
yeah.
with the people. There's do it yourself, and of course, wear it out, use it up, make it do or do without.
I like that.
And
Yeah,
right, and it's
yeah.
the people, it's the Minnesota's past that ought to be informing our future, because I tell you, if the lights were to ever go out in Minneapolis for 3 days, I would much rather I would much rather be with the people that have skills in how to, you think of those guys and gals that go to the forest and they want to live without running water for a weekend because that's their idea of fun, right?
Yeah,
Those are the guys that you want to hang out with. And
there you
I
go.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love being in a tent. I don't think people get it that, when we go camping, that's like that's a vacation. Well, it's a
Yeah.
vacation, but it's kind of like you have extra chores to do. But
Yeah,
eh,
right. I get it. Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know, people love it. We don't want to go to be taken care of and have
Yeah.
people wait on us hand and foot. I so yeah, rocks and cows and
So,
everything.
so the bright spot, when it comes down to all the anger, and it is literal anger, you can see it. I mean,
Right.
it's um, I don't know what you want to call it. It's deep down anger, uh,
Yes.
very hard to overcome. But I came, in my generation, just me living my 40-year generation, that has changed from a lighthearted, humorous, we can fight and then we can go out to eat, no problem. Now to a place where it's a matter of life and death and money.
Well,
$12,000 is not a little
yeah.
issue when I have to
Yeah.
overcome $12,000. And
Well,
I'm sorry, but my Democratic governor is largely responsible for that. Um, I have to
speak
be
to that
careful.
anger. Go
Yeah,
ahead, channel some of that anger because I see that frustration too, and I think it's fine to be angry about people that are squandering Minnesota's future and stealing it, and they call it feeding our future when they're literally feeding their future, and
right.
that money goes overseas. But it's not just that; it's the seeing people that came running here because their country had fallen apart, largely due to people like Ilhan Omar, whose father was corruption in the government, a reason why they had a civil war, and to have folks come here to the House of Minnesota and put their feet on our tables and be yes, and sorry, these comments are on me, but I can understand why some people would be upset with an Omar Fetta and
Right, right,
being in the Senate, and then all the characters. Uh, Actually, though, when Ilhan Omar speaks, she's the gift that keeps on giving, because I think she has a way of bringing Democrats and people in the middle over to the Republican side, saying, "Gee, I'm not really sure uh, she should be doing that or saying that." She's kind of like, let her talk ought to be our strategy. Like, go
right.
ahead. But
Yeah,
what's the what would the frustration be? It's that Minnesotans want to live. We are ecology minded. We love the land. We want fresh air. We want fresh water resources. We don't see the solutions to all these problems being, how do we figure out how to take money out of somebody else's wallet?
right, right,
And
right.
right.
So,
So
if you get that out to where I live here, 2 hours away from Metro, that's about all we are. We're coming into that realization, as a group. Um, Let me give you one example of what the shift is. President Trump comes along and says DEI and woke are out of the schools. We're not going there anymore. I'm going to cut your funding. I mean, we heard all of his rhetoric. A lot of it didn't happen. A lot of the threats have not happened. I understand that. But
yeah,
the point is, I brought that subject up when we had our school board elections. As a BPOU, we are on the more conservative side. We weren't, we are now. That was a shift that happened in a couple of years just previous to me. So I wasn't there when that happened, but I walked into the middle of it, right? And there was still a lot of conflict going on when I walked
yeah,
in. One of them was the school boards. So so I knew the school board member. He was very good friends. In fact, he was a supervisor of somebody I know very close. And I questioned him. I said, "You knew so and so, didn't you?" "Yeah, he worked for me." I said, "Did you know he was very conservative?" "Well, yeah, but he never really said anything." "Okay, that's fine." Um, and the person I'm talking to is very liberal. So I approached him on a more challenging topic, and it didn't come out real good. Right
yeah,
away, we felt
yeah,
this uh, obstacle. It was a block,
yeah.
and
Right.
and I confronted him. I got a little defensive. I don't mind doing that. I'm pretty capable of doing that, matter of fact.
Yeah.
So I did, and it was in public. Uh, and I did some more on Facebook with him, unpublic, 2,000 people looking at it as you peck away on the keyboard. You know how that goes.
Yeah.
Um,
Right.
and I kept my position, pretty well. And
Good.
I'm thinking what happens then when we have our more conservative, our more non-establishment Republicans, they're looking for that group of people. And I think that's what's happening, like in CD7. That's over the state. That's no secret anymore. That's out.
Right.
Everybody knows what's happening there. But it's the same
Yeah.
issue. It's exactly the same issue. One faction is staying closer connected with the people.
Yes.
I mean, to the point where they can call a constitutional meeting constitutional and have enough delegates show up to elect a new president or a new chairman. To me, that's
Oh,
constitutionally legal.
yeah.
You should be able
Yeah.
to do that. I
Yeah.
mean, you call we the people, and
Yeah.
you put that in the newspaper, you put it on the radio. Convention call, convention call, convention call. People come and they vote you in.
Yeah.
That's not a setup. I mean, that's public. That's a public. But then when you have another faction that's been there for 2 years without having a meeting, and they call themselves constitutional, how can you be constitutional when you
Um,
haven't followed the Constitution?
and we have upcoming a caucus process on the
Right?
3rd of February, Tuesday,
Huge, huge.
7 p.m. statewide GOP caucuses are happening. Are you looking forward to going to all of those BP? Are you going to
Oh,
try to make a number of those, or
well, that
you got
night,
five in your area? Are they going to be centralized somewhat,
no,
or
well, here's what happens, and I'm happy to share this because this is what I'm in the middle of right now. We're only 1 month away from this, right? Um,
right? It's really
so
important too.
yeah, so being a candidate, I go, okay, I would like my name to be out there. I mean, you're the best, but you don't put signs out in the middle of winter, obviously. I mean, there's a lot of things you don't do at this time of the year. Uh,
Yeah.
I mean, I could go knock on doors, but man, I mean, we're looking, November, and January. That's a long stretch of time, um, and likely you're going to find somebody settling down for the evening because they're cold and they want
Yeah.
to, they
Yeah.
don't want to come to the
Oh,
door. Anyhow, I'm being a little
how will you
wacky
deal
here,
with
but
that? Because
I
it's
think
a
you know what I'm
big
saying.
geography. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's much better to find people who are already together and say,
Yes.
hey, do you mind if I stop in? No, come on in. We love to have, and they all know me, of course. So I'm usually welcome in. So that's what I've been doing. So now let's get to the caucus. The caucuses are about an hour apart from each other. Well, you have to be there at 6 o'clock. And then at 7, that's when the gavel comes down. And or if you're going to sign the registration, you got to be there at 7. That's it. So you can come at 6, hang out, but you got to get your name on the registration before 7. Okay.
Okay.
So my
Yeah.
point is, I can't make it to 5 caucuses.
No, it's not
I,
possible.
I can't do
Right.
it. So I have to have proxies. I have to have people who commit to my cause, my name, and that's what I'm doing right now. So I'm trying to form 4 different groups, where I have a proxy. And then those people will speak and they can choose me or anybody. I don't, I mean, that's up to them, but at least I'm going to get my name there to give them a chance to know me. But that's what we're doing. And I don't know that that's been done before. I'm talking to people and a lot of people don't think that's been done before. Well, I'm going to do it. And that's what I have been doing. So the whole deal is expose the name on a very neutral basis. It could even be bipartisan, like at a township meeting, for example. Well, you got
Okay.
both. I mean, you got both parties. I mean, they're interested, in their township, which is great. And
Yeah.
I can say something neutral, like, yeah, we really need to maintain these ditches. We got, toxic weeds
Yeah.
in these ditches. Well, that's neutral. That's not partisan. So I get to do that. Um, I mean, the fact my name
So,
happens to be on the
but
Republican side, okay.
no, it's really important that so I mean, being a Republican and caring about ecology,
Right.
um, Democrats want to own stewardship of the land as an
Oh, yeah.
issue. They want to grab that and co-opt it and claim it as Republicans shouldn't cede that territory to the
Right.
Democrats. If anything, it's hunters and fishers and people who enjoy the wildlife. It's campers. It's truckers that are out there all the time that want to make it's
Right.
everyone who is in the countryside that wants to see the countryside preserved. Democrats have everybody thinking that somehow stewardship of the land is their issue, and I don't think it is.
No,
I don't think they enjoy being out in the woods without their soy lattes.
I'm sorry, but you make me laugh. But then, yes,
That's good.
I like it. Yeah. Well,
Or
okay. For example,
water from an
Nathan.
espresso. Yeah.
Okay, let's just mention Nathan Weisenberg again. Part of his campaign, he had a beaver burger event.
That's right.
Yeah, I go,
That's
yes,
famous now.
yeah,
Tell, tell
beaver
about the Beaver
burgers.
Burger event.
I'm
Oh
like,
my
come
gosh.
on, man. Well, you can't get more
Yeah.
grassroots, uh,
Grass
ecology.
fed organic meat.
Yes, yes. And
I
they
would
age
love to
out.
taste
Well, they
that.
age out like anything. They age
Yeah.
out. So you harvest them. There's nothing wrong with that. You harvest pigs and beef and chickens, and
Sure.
so you
Sure.
harvest some beaver. And
Yeah.
actually, it's not bad. It's pretty
I
good
would
meat.
try that.
Yeah, I
I
like,
haven't had game like wild. I
right?
haven't had that in a long time, but I've eaten lots of different types of
Oh,
animals
yeah.
and reptiles and some
Yeah,
fish that you're probably not supposed to eat, even blowfish and stuff like
right.
that,
I
that,
know. Yeah. I've been around.
all
Yeah,
kinds of strange food. But I would try that.
right.
No, but
So,
that shows a good sense of humor. But sorry,
well,
what
that's the
else?
point, though. We have these Republicans, and they're just really firm, solid. I mean, if anything, they're on the right side of this conservative spectrum. Uh,
Yeah, but
but
they have a good
they're not
sense of humor.
libertarian, but they have good libertarian friends, by the way. In fact, my exposure since 2024 to libertarians has been very positive, actually very
Yeah.
positive. And I never had that before because I didn't stick my nose into politics. Now I am. So I'm meeting libertarians, right? Man, they're my friends. I like these guys. I mean, I
Yeah.
have no issue. I have trouble having a dialogue like this would be a little hard because I'm as stubborn as they are, only on the other side of the spectrum. So,
Well, yeah, and when push comes to shove, they have to respect boundary issues, and they can't take, there's things where sometimes they rush into. My criticism of them would be that they rush in to take ownership almost as much as like an extreme, some other group on the left hand side would take ownership of an issue, and I don't feel like they should once the let's say once there's a process where we're looking for a candidate in a special election, they should come to help get a Republican elected, especially if they don't have a candidate in the race. Like, come to town and help the party drag
well,
one over the line.
see, we actually
Instead of-
have those are
so
the people that I have met. They do just that. Exactly.
nice. Okay,
So
good,
that's my favorable comment here when we have this
sweet.
discussion. It's beautiful. And I actually went to one of their meetings. It was a great
Well,
meeting. Uh,
one place where I think they're right, though, the what I fall on the libertarian side, I suppose, because some of the Republicans are really not very good at selling the policies of the Republican Party because for too often the people that run as Republicans are selected by corporate America or they're selected by the business community or
that's it.
in inverted quotes um, or they're selected by the Regional Economic Development Authority, which is kind of cycling them through to be in the public uh, life
Yeah.
for a while, and then bring them back, revolving door style between like
Yeah.
the Pentagon and the Hammer Factory,
Yeah.
and but so some of the Republicans, I mean, that would be like, okay, you did your part, now train your replacements and step aside, um,
Right.
but
Right. So,
but
so, and
they're power hoarding all the time. Some
right.
of the old,
So,
so we got
uh,
that in Rochester more.
yeah, in my personal position here, and some of it's age. I am 78. I don't want to hide that. I don't want that to be discovered later. You didn't tell us you were 78. I don't look
No.
like I'm 78. I don't feel like I'm 78. I don't act like I'm 78. And my doctor says I'm actually 57. So I'm
Well,
good.
they should be happy to vote for you because that's kind of a term limit then, isn't it?
Well, it is, but
I mean,
and a lot of
we have
people say, well, you might like it and you might want to stay for two more. Well, okay, so now I'm 81. Do I want to stay till I'm 83? I don't know. I'm not there yet. I don't know that. So but I can commit to two safely. I can
yeah,
do that.
yeah, yeah,
Well, my goal then would be, like you said, find that next person, not from the establishment world, but go out into your district,
right,
house to
right.
house. I mean, you might find a Democrat who was leaning on the conservative side of his
Yeah,
party.
right,
And
right.
he's just willing to say, I'll switch. I'm going to walk away.
That's the new energy coming into the
Right.
Republican Party are Democrats who walked away
Yes.
from the
Yes.
DFL. They're
I know.
absolutely done with the Democrat Party. And we better be ready on our side for that big tent because we're going to be seeing Latinos coming to town. We're going to
Right.
be seeing Black Americans coming to town. We're going to have like all of these Asians coming in, and we better like represent like not just those archaic like how we get painted by the Democrats for being humorless and
Yeah, that's funny. Yeah.
yeah.
I mean,
Well,
this
so
podcast is anything
yeah,
but humorless
yeah,
between you and I. I
right.
mean, I think
And
we
it's
got some life going here,
yeah,
which
and
is a
it's
good
more
thing.
revealing.
Right.
It's absolutely better a conversation than you're going to get on Minnesota Public Radio or
Yeah.
any of the networks. Would you have anything that you'd want to say to people by
Well,
way of
yeah,
encouragement to
as we,
participate in caucuses, or what's your
yeah, sort of bring this to an end here. It would be the
yeah,
caucus. That's the number one thing right now. And I'm really very neutral about as far as my own status. I'm neutral about that. Even my party, I can back off of that and say DFL, have caucuses, get out there. I am looking at their websites and they are very proactive on caucuses. They really are very proactive. And I feel kind of remiss. Where were you guys the last 30 years when I was not active? How come nobody invited me to a caucus? How come?
the
I was never
normal
invited.
Democrats were kind of pushed out of the party by more extreme factions. I mean, it just got more
Yeah,
and more further to the left. So it's not your granddad's, grandma's
yeah,
DFL Democrat Party. I think their problem would be for the Democrats, their problem would be if the normal Democrats started showing up again.
right.
The,
It would
the
be a problem.
normal,
Yes. So I've never been invited to either parties, either one. But yet I see the DFL has a lot of visibility on Facebook and some of the acts and some of these. So they're out there, promoting their caucus. So that's number one. You asked what I would promote. It would be go to caucus. Um, and we have 10,000 people potential. If we're 70% Republican, we have 7,000 people potential, and we can have four or five from every precinct. That we have, how many precincts we have? I think there's 60 precincts, I think, and all we
yeah.
would need is one rep, one conservative from each precinct to put a new candidate as the candidate. They could be endorsed. That's
Okay.
only one from every precinct. Well, we potentially could have four or five. So we could have as many as 300 proponents for one candidate. To me, whether that's my name or somebody else's, I think that's phenomenal. If you can have
Yeah.
300 people, you go to St. Paul and you go back home and you say, I got 300 friends out here. I know who they
Yeah.
are. I got their names right here in my notebook. Well, guess whose house I'm going to visit uh, for a
Yeah.
little, stopover for coffee. I'm gonna look at
Right.
my list, right? 300 people.
Right.
I'm gonna go see them. I mean, why not? They're my friends, right? So,
Yes.
I mean, I'm being a little bit superficial there, but I think you get the
Yeah.
point of what we're saying.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm working on. The other thing, really working on is to for every candidate, whether they're in office now or not, why don't you become more visible all year long? Why don't
Right.
you do that? Please,
Yes.
just do that. I don't want to feel like I'm busting into somebody's Thanksgiving dinner to talk to my representative.
Right.
I'm not, I want them out in the yard raking
Yes.
grass. I don't want to. I don't want to walk into their Christmas tree decoration time.
Uh,
Uh, and I feel like I'm doing that so often. Like
yeah,
knock,
they're
knock,
so
knock,
far
knock.
removed. They
Yeah,
should treat it like a customer service oriented business. They
yeah.
should
So that
be,
would be my two
yes,
things. If I could leave a message, if
yes,
people want to look at who they're voting for come next November, or endorsing come, I guess, the end of February and March, when they have
yes.
the endorsement. I mean, that's the word I want to leave. Uh, I have, other than that, I don't really have a horse in the race. I'm not going to lose a lot if somebody else steps up, does a good job. I'll probably
Yeah,
follow them. I'll cheer for them. Yeah, yeah, go man, go. But if they're not
yeah,
doing what I have in mind, I'm gonna,
yeah.
I'm gonna knock on their door.
I
You
I
know,
feel the same way about it. Yeah, because
I'm
we
gonna knock
we
on their
see a
door and say,
real
I can't support you if you don't do at least what I set out to do. You have to at least, as a minimum, do that much. Uh, and if you do, I'll support you. Not a problem.
yeah.
But if you're going to drag your feet and go to St. Paul to get your $50,000, I'm sorry. I just can't quite. I kind of lose my passion about that time,
Oh,
So I think you get,
excellent,
I mean, there's a
excellent.
lot more
Well,
behind what I said. I think you know what I'm saying.
I do know what you're saying, and it's almost like a topic for an additional podcast if we do a part two, because we could
You can
start
do it.
talking about what we think representatives ought to be doing on a regular basis. That might be a good conversation to have in the future, because
Right.
representatives should be way more accessible to their people than they are, and not just for listening to those canned speeches, but look, thank you so much for your time, and I'll give you the chance to say the final que sera sera goodbye tonight. I'm gonna just say thanks again, Bernie Penner, for your time and for your service to our community by running for Minnesota House Representative in District 10A, and wish you luck and say hello to all of our friends up there at
Thank you.
Cross Lake. And there's some good guys that we hung out with that day on Cross Lake and the night before. And the guy who was driving our boat, well, he had such a sense of humor. You know who I don't say his name out loud, but you know who I'm talking about. He was the captain of our boat. We had him in stitches sometimes when we were going after Governor Walz there. And I really enjoyed meeting Governor Walz the night before. I shook his hand, and I have washed it since then.
All right.
So
Well,
thank
with that prelude, I can go ahead and end our podcast. And I want to thank you too, Wes, for getting back to me. I know we met on the phone some time ago, and you actually remembered me and called my number, and I appreciate that. Thank you so much for doing that. And I hope your podcast does get out there, to kind of permeate the landscape, so to speak, get a different voice, a different point of view like your own. And you're sure welcome to wear that shirt. I'll tell you that's a great shirt. Um,
thank you.
but I would hope the rest of Minnesota would look at this area, Brainerd, Little Falls, Fort Ripley, all the way over to the lake, Malacca, because that's the area where I live, and see it in a little different light. We are proactive people that are so ready to step up to the plate. And, be we Democrats, be we Republicans, be we Libertarians, or someplace in between, some kind of a nationalist constitutional brand, we basically are tired of seeing our $12,000 a year disappear. It's crazy. We're done. We're just done with it. And we need leaders to step up and say, I don't know what the change is, but I guarantee you, when I get there, I will work for that change. So I can kind of bring it to a close on that note.
Thank you, Bernie. Appreciate your time. Have a good rest of the night.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye bye now.